Jacob. The story. Jacob, who would later be renamed Israel, is the son of Isaac, the promised son of Jacob's grandparents Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac's wife Rebekah. He is Esau's younger fraternal twin brother, the half-nephew of Ishmael, and the nephew of Rebekah's father Laban. He is the husband and cousin of Leah and Rachel, Laban's daughters. Through these two and his concubines, Bilhah and Zelophehad, produced 13 children, 12 sons and 1 daughter. Jacob's sons are Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin, the 12 tribes of Israel, and his daughter Dinah. After deceiving his brother Esau with help from Rebekah their mother, fled to Haran where the brother's uncle Laban lived, staying with him until Esau calmed down. Isaac blessed Jacob before he left, telling him to take a wife from Laban's immediate family, and placing the blessing first given to Abraham, then Isaac, and now Jacob, for God to create a great nation out of their descendants. One night on Jacob's journey from his home in Beersheba to his destination Haran, Jacob saw a vision from heaven as he slept. In his dream, Jacob saw a ladder connecting earth and heaven, with angels using it to travel between the two places. At the top of the ladder in heaven, he saw God, who told him this place would be given to his descendants. Jacob immediately woke up, believing this place was the house of God and the gate of heaven, so made a pillar with the stone he had used as a pillow and anointed it by pouring oil on top of it. He then renamed this place from Luz to Bethel, meaning the house of God. Jacob also vowed that if God provided for him and kept him safe during his journey, God would become his God, and the monument he created would be the house of God, plus he would give God 10% of what he had. When Jacob arrived in Haran, he spotted 3 flocks of sheep gathered around the well. He approached and asked the shepherds where they were from, and if they knew Laban. They confirmed they were from Haran, and they knew Laban. They also identified a young shepherdess in their sights as Laban's daughter Rachel. Jacob helped Rachel with her tasks and told her they were related. Jacob stayed a month with his uncle and cousins Rachel and her older sister Leah. After this, Jacob worked 7 years for Laban in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. However, after this time passed, Laban gave Jacob his oldest daughter Leah instead. Jacob confronted Laban about this. Laban suggested it was customary to marry the firstborn first, adding that if Jacob worked another 7 years, he would give him Rachel too. After Jacob married Leah, she received Zelophehad, Laban's maid, as her own. Rachel acquired another of Laban's maids, Bilhah. God saw that Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, so he gave Leah the first 4 of Jacob's 12 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel was jealous that Leah had given Jacob children and not her. She gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife to conceive children on her behalf. Bilhah gave birth to Jacob's 5th and 6th sons, Dan and Naphtali. Leah's maid Zilpah gave birth to Jacob's 7th and 8th sons, Gad and Asher. After Leah gave her to Jacob, as she couldn't have any more children. However, Leah did have more kids, providing 3 more to the growing family. She bore Jacob's 9th son Issachar, his 10th son Zebulun, and his only daughter Dinah. After all this, Rachel finally had a child, Jacob's 11th son Joseph, and later his 12th Benjamin. Jacob, with his 4 wives and 12 children, demanded Laban to let him leave and return home. Laban refused, asking him to stay. Jacob declined, asked Laban to remove the speckled and spotted sheep and goats and the black sheep from his flock, since most of his sheep were white and goats black or brown, and he would take them off Laban's hands. Laban agreed, but requested Jacob keep at least a 3-day journey between the 2 flocks. By the day's end, Laban completed Jacob's request. Jacob completed Laban's request, keeping them far apart. Jacob saw that some of the sheep and goats were ready to mate, so collected a bunch of branches from the almond, evergreen, and poplar trees. He then shaved a stripe pattern to each one of them and placed them in multiple places throughout his camp, each placement dependent on the flock's level of strength. Each placement was in the eyesight of the animals, tricking them into believing they were lambs and kids, baby goats, and encouraging them to mate. Jacob also separated the sheep and goats provided by Laban from those produced fully under his care. After all this, Jacob's was stronger and healthier than Laban's, making Jacob exceedingly wealthy. Following his success, Jacob found out that Laban's sons and Laban himself were seeking to kill Jacob, believing he had swindled them. At this point, God spoke to Jacob, telling him to return with all his possessions to his father Isaac in Canaan. God sent the angel of God, maybe the angel of the Lord, to speak to Jacob, confirming what he said before. After this dream, Jacob immediately fled on camels with his wives, children, and possessions, without telling Laban. However, before they left, Rachel stole her father's idols. Laban and his men followed Jacob 3 days after he escaped, crossing over the Euphrates River and catching Jacob and company while they were traveling in the hill country of Gilead. But God spoke to Laban in a dream, telling him not to interact with Jacob in any way. Laban didn't listen. He confronted Jacob, demanding an explanation, demanding he return the idols stolen from him. No one knew the thief was Rachel. Rachel had hidden the idols in the camel's saddle, sitting on the saddle while Laban searched their camp. Jacob condemned Laban for questioning his morals and integrity. Laban responded by claiming that all Jacob had was his. To settle their differences, they agreed to make a covenant. Jacob and his men gathered stones, piled them into a pillar, and Jacob and Laban made their vows, and the next day Laban returned home. Sometime during Jacob and his family's trip to meet Esau, Jacob struggled with a man until dawn, demanding he bless him, only releasing him because he dislocated Jacob's thigh. Afterward, the man changed Jacob's name to Israel, one who struggles with God. He realized this man was God, naming the place Peniel, face of God, because he saw God face to face and lived. At some point following Jacob and Esau's reunion and some massive family conflict, Jacob received a message from God telling him to go to Bethel and build an altar when he arrives. Jacob and company arrived, and Jacob built the altar as God requested. He renamed the location El-bethel, God of Bethel, from Bethel. On his way back from a trip to Paddan-aram, Haran, Jacob piled up some stones and poured a drink offering on it. He named the place Bethel. This spot was significant for Jacob because God had just appeared to him, confirming his name change to Israel, and that he would give this land to Jacob's descendants. On the same trip, Rachel gave birth to Jacob's final child and 12th son, Benoni, the son of my sorrow, named such because she died during the birth. Rachel was buried where she died, and Jacob piled rocks on her grave before they carried on to their destination, Ephrath, Bethlehem. Jacob also changed their newborn son's name to Benjamin. Many years later, when Jacob was an old man, God called him to travel to Egypt, because there was a great famine and Egypt had a massive stock of supplies available. Plus he confirmed this was the location he would fulfill his promise to create a great nation. Jacob died in Egypt, aged 147, the youngest of the 3 patriarchs. His father Isaac died 180, and Abraham 175. His son Judah's descendants would carry on the family line leading to Jesus. Digging deeper. We'll begin this section by discussing a newly introduced theme into the biblical story, anointing, specifically anointing with oil. This theme is explored in both the Old and New Testament, and is introduced in Genesis 28:19, Jacob's response to his first encounter with God. The recipe for the anointing oil is found in Exodus 30:23-24. Take also for yourself the finest of spices, of flowing myrrh 500 shekels, and of fragrant cinnamon half as much, 250, and of fragrant cane 250, and of cinnamon 500, according to the shekel of the sanctuary, and of olive oil a hin. It's unknown whether Jacob's oil used this formula. Many commandments in the law of Moses and other parts of the Old and New Testament record the oil being poured on things, as Jacob did. These include Aaron, his sons, and all priests onwards. Leviticus 8:30 records the oil being sprinkled on Aaron. Kings like Saul and David, and objects and utensils in the tabernacle. Another use for the anointing oil, apart from sanctification, pouring and sprinkling, is healing, as proposed in James 5:14-15. Those who are physically, emotionally, or spiritually ill should be by faith prayed for and anointed with oil by the church. James doesn't specify whether this oil is literal or more symbolic, like Mary pouring her perfume on Jesus' feet. Either way, anointing with oil was and is an important symbol for both Jews and Christians. We'll finish by investigating further into Genesis 32, verses 24 to 32, beginning by looking at the significance of Jacob's thigh being dislocated. In the final verse of the chapter, verse 32, records that the Israelites didn't eat the sinew, the tendon that connects muscles to bone, of the hip, or in other words, the area around the hip joint. After looking online, it appears Jews today still don't eat this part of the animal. The reason this area is avoided is seemingly because God touched this part of Jacob's body, making it holy in their eyes and should be avoided. Another interesting point from this passage in Genesis 32 is that this is the first mention of many of the name Israel, which means one who struggles with God. This connects to the many recorded events throughout the Bible in both the Old and New Testaments, where the Israelites struggle with God, either drastically sinning or facing intense consequences from sins, including the golden calf in Exodus, the exile to Babylon, and the religious leaders' conflict with Jesus, among others. What to learn? What should we take away from the story of Jacob? I believe it teaches us the importance of faith and obedience and the importance of honesty. Throughout the recorded parts of Jacob's story, Jacob shows a deep sense of faith, obedience, and love for God. Genesis 28:16-22 tells of Jacob's gratitude towards God for the promise he received, and the actions and words he expressed to show this. Genesis 32 tells of Jacob's reaction to Rachel demanding he give her a child, angry she was putting him in place of God. Genesis 31:3, 35:1, and 46:3 are instances when God spoke to Jacob, commanding him to travel or return to different locations. Jacob immediately, without question, obeyed. All 5 examples provide an insight into Jacob's relationship with God. The story of Laban and Jacob provides an example of God's disdain for wickedness. Laban tricked Jacob into taking Leah's hand in marriage after promising to give him Rachel for 7 years of work. Laban tried to trick Jacob, believing Jacob's request for his outcast sheep and goats was beneficial for him. God turned both these events in Jacob's favor, knowing Jacob's heart was good and Laban's was bad. Leah became the mother of 6 of Jacob's 12 sons, and Rachel was the mother of 2. The outcast sheep and goats that Jacob took increased dramatically, causing Jacob to become exceedingly wealthy, wealthier than Laban. How does this apply to us today? Like Jacob, God looks at our hearts. He sees our intentions and acts accordingly. It's important to be honest in everything we do. Not doing so can lead to dire consequences. It angers God and makes other people not want to associate with us. It also doesn't show the love Jesus commanded us to show to God or others. This ties into the importance for us to show our love for God and others, expressed through being obedient to the commands God's given us, all part of acting on the faith we claim. Of course, we're not perfect, and neither is Jacob. Yet if you ever need a refresher and an example of what an awesome relationship with God looks like, why not look to Jacob?